I invested my last money to start a business with a friend, and then I heard him say in a bar about me, "He's nobody." She was just a driver who drives clients with show-offs. A year later, he came to me to get a job. I said, "There are no vacancies for drivers, but there are plenty of movers." I can still remember that night. The bar was crowded, the kind of place where the air is thick with laughter, clinking glasses, and the hum of too many voices trying to outdo one another. It was supposed to be a celebration. We had just signed on a big client, one of those corporate types who don't care about price as long as they get top-tier service. Mike had been pushing for that deal for months. He called me up the night it was finalized, his voice full of excitement. "We did it, man. We did it. This is the big one." I knew exactly what he meant. We'd been building this business for a while. Black car rides for executives, high-end airport transfers, VIP clientele. It was Mike's dream, but I was in it just as much. We started out small, a couple of cars, a few clients, but we grew quickly. We had the right equipment, the right approach. We had the drive, the heart. I did the hard work, managing the fleet, ensuring the cars were clean and ready, handling the logistics, scheduling the rides. Mike did the talking. He schmoozed the clients, negotiated the deals, made the connections. He was the face of the company. I was the engine that made it run. Mike and I had been best friends since high school. We had shared everything: dreams, failures, successes. But as the years went on, I started to realize something. I was doing all the heavy lifting. Sure, Mike had the charm, but it was me who was putting in the hours. I worked the nights when he went out. I handled the tough clients, the scheduling, the ins and outs of running a business. But every time we made progress, every time we made a new deal, it felt like Mike got the credit. And I was okay with that. I was loyal. I believed in the vision. But that night, in that bar full of clients and mutual friends, something snapped. We were all celebrating, drinks in hand, Mike holding court as usual. People were laughing at his jokes, patting him on the back, praising his hustle. Then, as if it was just another throwaway comment, Mike turned to the group and said, "Jake, he's just the driver, not a partner, just a cabbie with an ego." The words hit me like a slap to the face. I had heard him talk about me behind my back before. Little jokes, little comments, always about how I was just a driver. But hearing it in front of everyone, in front of the clients we worked so hard to impress, it felt different. It felt like a betrayal. I stood there frozen, my hand gripping the glass in front of me, staring at him. It was as if the room had gone quiet, but the sound of my heartbeat was deafening. The words kept echoing in my head. Just a cabbie. Everything I had built, everything I had given to this business, it didn't matter. In his eyes, I was nothing, just the driver. I wanted to say something, to stand up for myself, to tell him how much I had sacrificed, how much I had given. But the words wouldn't come. I felt small, insignificant, and that's when I realized how much I had been lying to myself, how much I had let this go on. The truth was, I had never really been his equal. I was just the guy who did the dirty work while he got all the glory. He had never treated me as a partner. I was the help, the labor. I tried to shake it off, to laugh along with the others, but the sting wouldn't fade. And as the night went on, it became clear to me, I had been a fool to think Mike was my friend. He wasn't. I didn't say anything that night. I just walked out. As I stepped into the cool night air, I felt like I was suffocating. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal, it all hit me like a wave. And for the first time in years, I wasn't sure what I was doing. I was left with nothing but the harsh taste of humiliation and a sinking feeling in my gut. No contract, no rights, just debt. I knew I had to walk away. There was no room for someone like me in Mike's world anymore. But that night, as I walked home, I made a promise to myself. It wasn't over. Not yet. I wasn't going to let him win. I wasn't going to let this betrayal define me. I had a plan, and it would take time, but I would show Mike exactly who I was. The next few weeks were brutal. I couldn't escape that damn bar scene, the sting of Mike's words replaying in my head over and over. Just a cabbie with an ego. It wasn't just the words themselves. It was the public humiliation. The moment I walked out of that bar, everything about the business we had built, everything I thought we had, fell apart. I didn't just lose a business partner. I lost a friend. At least I thought he was a friend. But Mike had made it clear I was nothing more than an employee, a cog in his machine. I spent the first few days pacing, trying to figure out what to do. I couldn't just walk away. It wasn't in my blood. But every path I thought of led to a dead end. Without a contract, without a stake in the company, what was I supposed to do? The business was his. Legally, emotionally, everything. The debt I had taken on for this company was mine to bear too. I had leveraged my car, my savings, and even maxed out a loan to buy additional vehicles. It was all tied to this sinking ship. The more I thought about it, the worse it got. He had set me up for failure. And the worst part was, he didn't even care. I tried to reach out to him a few times, but Mike was too busy. He had his new clients, his new image. I was yesterday's news. He never picked up. I wasn't surprised. I had known him long enough to see the signs. The slick talker who promised loyalty was always the one who'd turn his back when the going got tough. I spent the next few months working for other companies, taking jobs I used to look down on, driving, picking up passengers, listening to other drivers complain about the business. It was like a cruel joke. The hustle I had known, the one I thought I was building, was gone. My savings were dwindling. The loan was looming. And Mike? He was out there living the high life, taking clients to exclusive restaurants, running his empire. I felt like I was sinking. The pride I had worked so hard to maintain was slipping away piece by piece. But there was something inside me that wouldn't let me give up. Something sharp. A quiet voice telling me to get up, to push back. One night after a particularly long shift, I sat in my car, the engine idling in front of a diner. My eyes were heavy, my hands sore from gripping the wheel, but I couldn't stop thinking. That was when I had the idea, a plan. It wasn't going to be easy. It was going to take time, but it was the only option I had left. I wasn't going to beg Mike for a second chance. I wasn't going to crawl back to him. No, I was going to do what he never thought I could. I was going to build something better. I was going to start from scratch, smarter, sharper, and more ruthless. I knew the business. I knew the clients. I knew exactly what had gone wrong. I had to start small, but that was fine. I'd been small before. The hustle was in my blood. But this time, I wasn't going to make the same mistakes. I'd learn everything about the black car service business. I'd build it better. And when the time came, I'd take what was mine. I spent the next few months working tirelessly. I saved up whatever I could. I took on smaller jobs, used the money to buy another car, to rent out a small office space. I couldn't do it all at once, but I was learning, adapting. Slowly, I began to rebuild my reputation. I started making calls to my old clients, the ones Mike thought I'd never be able to hold on to. And surprisingly, they remembered me. I gave them better rates, better service. I had a reputation for being reliable. I didn't have the charm Mike had, but I made up for it in grit. I worked harder than anyone. I was always early, always prepared. I started pulling clients away from Mike, one by one. And when they came back because of me, not Mike. But I didn't stop there. I hired away his best drivers, the ones he treated like tools to make him look good. I knew the kind of people who would jump ship for a better offer. I offered them better working conditions, more respect, and of course, better pay. And then I did something Mike never saw coming. I bought out part of his fleet, a few of the cars he had left hanging around from his failed expansion. It wasn't much, but it was a start. It hurt him more than I thought it would. Slowly, as the months passed, I watched his empire begin to crumble. No more investors, no more drivers, no more clients. The calls stopped coming for Mike. His image, the one he had carefully built for so long, was fading. The business he had once proudly boasted about was slipping through his fingers. As I sat in my office one morning, looking over the papers I had signed for my new contract with a high-end client, I couldn't help but smile. The ground was shifting beneath Mike's feet, and I was ready to finish what I had started. The best part? He had no idea what was coming. Time has a funny way of shifting things, doesn't it? One minute, you're on top of the world, and the next, everything starts slipping through your fingers. Watching Mike's business slowly unravel was the strangest feeling. On one hand, I couldn't help but feel a sense of justice, like something in the universe was finally evening the score. On the other hand, it felt hollow. I had built something from scratch, no shortcuts, no handouts. But Mike, he thought he could just waltz through life, taking credit for everything, using charm and lies to keep things afloat. And now, here I was, watching as everything he built, everything he'd stolen from me, slowly crumbled. It wasn't just the business that was falling apart, it was his entire world. Mike was a guy who thrived on appearances. His brand, his fancy dinners with clients, the expensive suits, it was all part of the game he played. But you can only keep up a facade for so long before it collapses. The more his empire deteriorated, the more desperate he became. I remember the day I heard the news. I was sitting in my office going over new contracts when I got a call from a former client, one of Mike's top clients. The guy was furious. "I don't know what happened, Jake," he said, his voice strained. "We called Mike for a ride last week, and he didn't even show up. No word, nothing. What kind of business does that?" I could hear the anger in his voice, the frustration. Mike had never been reliable, but this was the beginning of the end. His reputation was shot. He couldn't keep up the image anymore. Over the next few weeks, it got worse for him. Clients started bailing. The big accounts that had kept his business alive were vanishing. Mike had no one left to turn to. No partners, no drivers, no employees. And the investors? They were out the door faster than he could say rebranding. I felt a strange sense of vindication, but it didn't feel as sweet as I'd imagined. Watching someone's empire fall is a messy thing, especially when you know that empire was built on lies. I had my own business now. Things were going well. My clients were loyal, the drivers were happy, and I was building a team that actually respected me. But Mike, he was crashing hard. It all came to a head when I received a letter, a formal notice. Mike was suing me. At first, I thought it was a joke. He had no legal claim over anything I was doing. But I wasn't naive. I knew what this was, a last-ditch attempt to pull me back into his world. The letter was a desperate move. Mike knew he was done for. His pride couldn't handle it. He wanted to pull me into a legal battle, a way to drag me down with him. But I wasn't stupid. I wasn't going to let him. The lawsuit was laughable. It was built on empty threats and the assumption that I would fold under pressure. But I had no intention of folding. In fact, it was the final nail in the coffin for me. I had been waiting for something like this, a sign that I had beaten him. I spent the next few weeks tightening everything up in my business. I made sure everything was documented. Every contract, every deal, every move I made. I wasn't just building a company, I was building an airtight defense. The lawsuit went nowhere. Mike's claims were absurd. He didn't even have a leg to stand on. It was just another failed attempt to salvage his reputation. The worst part? He didn't even realize that the people he had left behind, the people he had lied to, treated like dirt, weren't going to rush to his defense. No one was coming to save him. His empire had fallen, and he was left with nothing. Then 1 year later, I got the call. It was from Mike. He sounded different. His usual confidence was gone. There was no bravado, no charm, just desperation. "Jake," he said, his voice cracking, I just need a shot, a second chance. Please." There it was, the moment I had been waiting for, the moment I knew would come. A year. It had taken a year for Mike to finally crawl back to me. The man who once called me a cabbie with an ego was now begging for a second chance. The irony was so thick I could almost taste it. I'd spent months building a business that was steady and reliable, something I could be proud of. I didn't need him. I didn't owe him anything. But when he called, I couldn't help but feel a pang of something deep inside me. Was it pity? Maybe. Or was it something more personal? A reminder of the years we spent together, building our dream from nothing. We were friends once, or at least, I thought we were. I couldn't shake the image of all those nights in the garage, dreaming of what we'd build. We had plans, big plans, the kind that, in my naivety, I believed would come true. But that dream had been buried when Mike threw me under the bus. I sat at my desk staring at my phone for a moment before hitting the dial. It was time for me to play the final card. "Mike," I said, my voice calm but firm, "what do you want?" There was silence on the other end for a moment before he spoke, his words slow and measured. "Jake, I lost everything. I can't get the business back. But I swear to you I've learned. I'm asking for a chance. Just one. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll work for you, man. I'll do anything." I leaned back in my chair, running my fingers over the back of my neck. My mind was racing. The man who had stolen everything from me, who had humiliated me in front of our clients, was asking for help. Part of me wanted to say yes, to watch him grovel, to let him back in so I could destroy him from the inside out. But there was another part of me that wanted to make him sweat. He had no idea what I had planned. "You know," I said, choosing my words carefully, "we're not looking for drivers right now, but we do need warehouse guys. Starting wage is fair. You interested?" There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing, the sound of a man who had nothing left to lose. "Warehouse?" he finally asked, disbelief in his voice. "That's what you want me to do? After everything?" I could feel his ego bruising. I didn't care. I wasn't here for his pride. I was here to make him pay. He had taken everything from me, and now it was my turn to give him the most humiliating job I could think of. To let him feel what it was like to be small, insignificant, to put him in a place where he couldn't charm his way out of anything. "Yeah," I said, my voice as cold as I could make it. "Warehouse. The job starts Monday. If you want it, it's yours." For a long time he didn't respond. It was like he was trying to process what I had just said. The Mike I knew would have cursed me out, tried to talk his way around it, manipulated the situation to his advantage. But this time he didn't. There was nothing but silence. Finally he spoke again. His voice sounded tired, broken. "All right, I'll be there Monday." The call ended. I sat there for a long time after, letting it all sink in. I had won. It was done. The man who had once thought he could play the world with nothing but his charm was now going to be a cog in my machine. A cog in a world he didn't understand, one he had no control over. Monday came faster than I expected. It was strange the way the days dragged on, and then suddenly everything hit all at once. I'd prepared myself for this moment, but there was something unsettling about watching Mike walk into my warehouse. He looked different. The flashy suits were gone, replaced by a plain uniform with my company's logo. He looked tired, defeated. But there was something else in his eyes, a flicker of that same arrogance I remembered from before. Like he thought he could still turn it all around with a smile. I watched him from my office window as he stumbled through the first few hours. The warehouse was nothing glamorous, just rows of vehicles, parts, and boxes to manage. Mike had always been about the spotlight, the charm, the smooth talk. This wasn't his world. This was where the work got done, where things were earned, not bought, where every little task counted. He wasn't used to it. You could see it in the way he fumbled with the inventory, the way he hesitated when a driver asked him to check the vehicle's tire pressure. It was pathetic, honestly. Mike had been king of his little world for so long that he had no idea how to do the grunt work. I had to resist the urge to watch him struggle. It was almost too easy, but that wasn't the point. The point was this: he was learning the consequences of his actions. Every time he looked up and saw me watching, it was a reminder of how far he'd fallen. His pride was broken, piece by piece. Every time I made him do something he had never done before, and I made sure to remind him of it every chance I got. "You know," I said one morning, walking into the warehouse, "this is the kind of work we do every day. It's not all glitz and glamour like you think." He was sorting paperwork at a desk, his hands trembling as he tried to organize it. "I get it, Jake," he said, his voice tight. "I do. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to prove I can do it." "Trying isn't enough," I said, crossing my arms. "You thought this was all about the easy ride, but you had no respect for the people who did the real work, the ones who made sure the cars ran smoothly, the ones who kept the clients happy. You never saw that. You just saw yourself at the top, with everything coming to you." Mike didn't answer. He just lowered his head, his shoulders slumped. The facade was gone. He wasn't the smooth-talking Mike anymore. He was just a man who had lost everything. And now he had nothing but the humility of someone who had been crushed by his own arrogance. Over the next few weeks, I made him work harder, longer. Every day I gave him new tasks, some simple, some difficult. It was brutal, and I made sure he knew it was meant to be. Each task was a lesson. He had to unload trucks, clean the office, handle calls from irate clients who demanded more than he could give. He had to deal with the gritty side of business, the side that wasn't glamorous, that didn't make it onto Instagram or into the fancy ads. And the more I made him work, the more I saw him change. At first, he resisted. He complained. He tried to talk his way out of it. But slowly, something shifted in him. He wasn't just doing the work anymore. He was learning it. The desperation in his eyes began to fade, replaced by a quiet understanding. He was realizing bit by bit what it meant to build something from the ground up, and how hard it was to lose it all. One evening after a particularly grueling day, he came into my office. I didn't look up right away, but I heard the hesitation in his footsteps. "I know you hate me, Jake," Mike said, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "And I get it. I deserve it. But thank you for not letting me off easy, for showing me what this really takes." I didn't say anything for a long time. I just kept working, my fingers moving over the paperwork in front of me. The silence between us was thick. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was final. I had made him face everything he had been running from. Finally, I looked up at him. His eyes were tired, his face weathered from weeks of real work. But there was a change in him, a subtle one. He wasn't the same Mike that had laughed at me in the bar. He wasn't the same man who thought he could control everything with a smile and a handshake. No, now he was just a man who had learned the price of betrayal. "You don't need me, Mike," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You never did. But you needed this, and now you've had it." He nodded, his face unreadable. "Yeah, I guess I did." I stood up from my desk and walked past him, heading toward the door. "You're free to go," I said over my shoulder. "I've given you your chance, but you've learned what you needed to learn. Now it's time for you to figure out who you really are." As I left the office, I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. There was no grand victory, no triumphant moment where Mike begged for my forgiveness. Instead, there was only the quiet finality of a chapter closed. The business was mine. The revenge, well, it wasn't about destroying him. It was about making him realize finally what he had taken from me. And as I watched him leave, I knew that in the end, I had won. Not just the business, but my peace.